Joe Rogan keeps having on fucking morons, absolute idiots, and engages with them as if they know anything. It's unbelievable. Right. Joe Rogan had on Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard is an actor. You know him from Empire and a bunch of other things. Anyway, apparently he's a dum-dum. But he is a dum-dum who thinks he's a genius, which is like the scariest kind of dum-dums. Of all the dum-dums, that's the worst kind to be. Terrence Howard, so he doesn't just say that he understands the entire science world, the entirety of science, but he says that he has all the answers that our scientists, meaning human, because he's not human, all our human scientists have gotten wrong or don't understand. And he goes on to explain it. And it's all gibberish and dum-dum talk. What I'm going to play are some clips of him, but also some clips of him being debunked by a scientist. Here's the thing. Here's the reason I actually am covering this. It's not, he has a right to be a moron, okay? There are morons out there. And he even has a right to go on podcasts and things and talk about and reveal how much of a moron he is. But what disturbs me more is Joe Rogan, a show that I've been on twice. Now, I was on back before it was the thing that everybody watches. It disturbs me that Joe Rogan will have him on and have others on, and he's not the only one, to spout this gibberish, this absolute garbage, and not refute it. Joe Rogan just sits there, and even in other interviews after Joe Rogan spoke to Terrence Howard, and after Terrence Howard has been debunked, and after Terrence Howard has been debunked even by Neil deGrasse Tyson and many others, and they've shown how dumb he is, Joe Rogan has gone on future podcasts, because this is about a month ago, and he's had many more since, and talked about how smart Terrence Howard is. You're just like, what is happening? What? Okay, so I want to play just a couple of clips. Again, this is a scientist who I find pretty funny, debunking Terrence Howard. This guy also shows clips of him appearing on The View and other things.
Who will be a more receptive audience?
Well, you have to remember our entire world economy is based on 1 × 1 = 1.
Yeah, our entire economy is based on 1 × 1 = 1. Well, economics does involve numbers, so it should obey the basic logic surrounding numbers that even children can understand. So what's the problem?
Sorry to interrupt again. Terrence Howard believes 1 × 1 does not equal. Does not equal 1. He believes 1 × 1 = 2. And he wears t-shirts that say 1 × 1 = 2. I actually, the scientist that debunks this doesn't take time to say this next part, so I'll go ahead and say it. It's because Terrence Howard doesn't understand the word times. Like, he doesn't understand what multiplication is. And all you have to do to figure out what multiplication is just say 1 time. Like, I have this mug 1 time. So I have 1 time mug. So 1 times this mug is mug. Like, that's all you have to do, honestly, to really get it. Like, what is 1 when it only happens 1 time? It is 1. What is 2 when it happens 2 times? It is 4. That's what times means. Like, I think if you just take it out of multiplication and just picture it as I had this thing 1 time, so mug 1 time is mug. Terrence Howard does not understand that. Legit thinks that a mug 1 time would be 2 mugs.
So if you can prove that an action times an action equals a reaction, which science proves, then 1 × 1 must equal more than 1. And to have the physical proof of it, that kind of shakes things up a bit.
Well, you're a shaker-upper.
Wow. If you can prove that an action times an action equals a reaction. Okay, numbers are not actions. They're numbers. So that doesn't mean anything. An action times an action also doesn't mean anything because actions are not numbers. Also, no, 2 actions do not necessarily cause a reaction, no matter what he could possibly mean by reaction. If 2 forces are acting on an object that are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction, the object won't move. 2 actions, no reaction. Sorry, Terry. Everything he just said is bananas idiotic.
That professor explained better than I could have just how dumb this is. So besides basic math, Terrence Howard also thinks he's come up with new images and new designs, and he has patents. You can get a patent on anything, right? You spend enough money because it costs several $100s. He patented certain shape. Now, okay, if I take a thing and I go like this, and then I send it and I want to spend $1,000 patenting this design, I could probably get a patent. So he has patents on these things, and he thinks that makes him a genius. So he says, I have 94 patents. Okay, you drew a new shape. It's not, not actually a new shape. You drew a shape that no one bothered to patent before. It's not a thing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're smart. And actually, somewhere else in this video, I don't have it here. This professor goes, what does it even mean to patent a shape? Yeah, my friend owns the patent for a rhombus. Man, is he rich. It's ridiculous. It's on its face. But he thinks he's a genius. And Joe Rogan had this guy on and let him talk for 3 hours, and people believe his garbage, believe that Terrence Howard has figured something out, and Joe Rogan lets them believe this. Either Joe Rogan would have to be as dumb as Terrence Howard, which is kind of preposterous, or Joe Rogan just knows this garbage gets clicks and he's fine with it. And that scares me too. But I think it might be a mix of being really dumb and getting clicks, because Joe Rogan has said in other interviews how smart Terrence Howard is, and that does not get him extra clicks, right? So why would he go ahead and do that later? Also, Joe Rogan has had on other people that are as dumb as Terrence Howard, spouting garbage. Literally, he had on another guy who said that the pyramids were actually ancient aliens that used them to, it wasn't the ancient alien guy with the crazy hair, it was someone else, used them to steal energy or hydrogen from not the United States, from the earth. And the guy couldn't even pronounce the word circumference. He's telling us how all of science is wrong, and he can't pronounce the word circumference. He was saying circumference or something. And it's just like, why does Joe Rogan sit there and allow it? Why? And at one point, Joe Rogan does debunk one of the dumbest things the guy says. The guy tells Joe Rogan to pull up on Google an image of the moon, and he shows how in the image of the moon, you can see pyramidal shapes. And he says, look, clearly the moon at one time had pyramids. And Joe Rogan goes, oh, I think that's just a cursor that someone put on the image of the moon, like a triangle, to point at something that they saw on the moon. The guy thought that the cursor was a fucking pyramid. And Joe Rogan actually corrected him on that. And yet, if I were doing that interview, if I had a guy on who told me there's pyramids on the moon, and then it turns out he thinks cursors are pyramids, I would say, thank you, interview over. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye to the now. To now, goodbye. This is over. I do not keep talking to someone who thinks cursors are pyramids on the moon. And Joe Rogan does. And he does. All right, let me play one more clip. Terrence Howard also thinks, which is what's in this one, that he has reinvented the periodic table in a way that it not just like a redesign of it, like a way that it reveals all new things and it's completely different, and all of science just is ignoring how genius he is.
You say rebuild the periodic table. What do you mean specifically?
Well, the way the periodic table is laid out, you'll see hydrogen sitting all the way over there by itself, but they don't show that hydrogen has the same tone as carbon.
What do you mean by tone?
Same tone, same key of E, same key of E. 40.5 hertz. The next one would be like 81 hertz. You go to silicon, it will double up and would be 162 hertz. You'll go to cobalt and it'll be 324 hertz. It's, in that base, if you were to take the angles of incidence or the tones that they create, their color, like you can turn color back into sound.
Joe wants to know what the hell he's talking about, and Terry is off to the races rambling about tones. Elements are not tones. They're not notes. They're not keys. They're not anything related to music whatsoever. They're atoms with a particular number of protons in the nucleus. He's throwing out random terminology and random numbers. Angle of incidence has to do with light. Sounds are not colors, and there's nothing more to say about this unparalleled gibberish.
You'll see there's a relationship between hydrogen, carbon, silicon, cobalt, rhodium. They're all bonded. They're all sit as the middle point between two noble gases. So those things don't really exist. It's only one substance.
No, Terry, those elements exist. Hydrogen and carbon and silicon and cobalt and rhodium are different elements. They are not the same thing. Hydrogen gas is not the same as a hunk of coal, which is not the same as a sample of silicon, and so forth. They're just the halfway point of their respective periods, which is irrelevant.
Now, the problem is the first thing that we're able to perceive is hydrogen. That's the first visible element, because before it is too dense for us to perceive it. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
No, hydrogen is the first element because it's the element with one proton in its nucleus. Elements are defined by the number of protons in the nucleus, and hydrogen has one. That's the smallest positive integer.
Okay, I'll stop there. You get the point. Professor Dave Explains is the one who did this video. But again, the reason I'm doing this video is not because I'm better at debunking Terrence Howard than a scientist or professor. Yeah, I'm covering this because it is so insane that Joe Rogan, who in many ways is in the same sphere, he's about 1 billion times more popular, but same sphere as what I do. He has on guests. He talks about world events. He talks about world events that are not allowed in the mainstream media. These are all could be called important things at times. He's had me on, so that's an important thing, right? I'm the most important thing in the world, of course. And even though I went on when he was a smaller platform, it was one of the biggest platforms that ever had me on because I am blacklisted from mainstream media. All of that to be said, I'm covering this because it is so frustrating to see someone have these dum-dums on and give them a platform and never tell anyone that they're wrong and never really push back other than the one cursor on the moon moment, and then continue to act like these people are not lunatics. There is no difference between Terrence Howard and the other idiot that Joe Rogan had on saying what they're saying and having someone on who just drools on themselves and shits their pants and then says, soda can, eyeball, tooth, like, why not talk to that guy? Why not talk to someone who is severely mentally ill and isn't making sentences? There is no reason that you should believe one over the other or think one is more important to talk to. And yet Joe Rogan is doing this. And it's just it's so sad. And then of course there's the propaganda guest he has on, like I did a debunking of something I was far more informed on, debunking of the anti-North Korea propagandists. I'm not saying there aren't criticism of North Korea to be had. There are. But she's funded by the U.S. government, and her job is to go around and just make up absolute insane things about North Korea. And Joe Rogan had her on for 3 hours and sat there and nodded and said, oh, interesting. And it's like, wow. I would say do some research before you have a guest on, but you don't have to do research to know 1 times 1 doesn't equal 2. You really don't. You really don't have to do any research to know that. It's so painfully pathetic.